Hey folks, welcome back. Now, as we move further along in our CloudWatch section, it's going to be important to understand the concepts and terminology. So in this lesson, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to talk about concepts and terminology a little bit, and we will end the lesson in CloudWatch from the Management Console. So in our DevOps doctrine, let's click the Concepts and Terminology button. Now, throughout this section, we're going to hear a lot about metrics. Metrics out of the box and custom metrics. But metrics are really at the heart of CloudWatch. They represent a time-ordered set of data points that are published to CloudWatch. So we're sending metrics from our services, from our Elastic Load Balancer, auto-scaling group, EC2 instances. We're sending that data to CloudWatch. Now, this data can be sent automatically to CloudWatch, or in the case of custom metrics, data can be sent from our applications to CloudWatch. So let's talk about some key points about metrics. Metrics only exist in the region in which they are created. That's very important, of course. Another point is metrics cannot be deleted, but they will expire after 14 days if no new data is published to them. Another point is services can have multiple metrics. For example, our load balancer could have a metric for latency and another metric for the number of requests. Each metric has data points organized by time, 1 minute or 5 minutes as an example. The metric has a name, a namespace, and one or more dimensions. Now, if we look at our diagram, examples of namespace, AWS/EBS, AWS/ELB, AWS/EC2. Now, our data points also have a timestamp and a unit of measurement, such as milliseconds, for example. And we can use API actions to publish and retrieve data to and from CloudWatch. Now let's talk a little bit about CloudWatch statistics. There are 5 statistics in CloudWatch: average, minimum, maximum, sum, and sample count. Now, these statistics are basically aggregations of our metric data over a specified period of time. And that time period can be from 60 seconds all the way to 2 weeks. That brings us to CloudWatch periods. Periods allow us to control what data is aggregated in statistics and can be used for alarms. Now, an example of this in action is, let's say we have a CloudWatch alarm for an auto-scaling group, and our alarm is on CPU utilization of greater than 80% for a period of 5 minutes. So that's where our CloudWatch periods come into play. It specifies that time frame for which we are collecting data for that alarm. All right, now we have a little bit more terminology to talk about. Let's click on our key concepts, and that brings us to CloudWatch dimensions. Dimensions represent a name-value pair that uniquely identifies a metric. So let's take EC2 for example. Some metric dimensions for EC2: instance ID, instance type, image ID, auto-scaling group name. So this would be the name of the auto-scaling group that this instance belongs to. So some of the dimensions we could use, we can certainly use the instance ID to get dimensions for one specific instance. Instance type, say T2 micro, for example. We could get dimensions on all of the instances in a specific auto-scaling group. And likewise, with Elastic Load Balancer metric dimensions, we could use the availability zone dimension, drill down the whole way to the load balancer name. Another way to isolate different application and service metrics is CloudWatch namespaces. And we saw this in the diagram, example namespaces: AWS/EBS/ELB, /EC2. So you can see we can use namespaces to isolate different AWS services. And finally, with namespaces, we can create custom namespaces if we create custom metrics. Now let's bounce back to the diagram real quick, and we're going to talk about CloudWatch logs and components of logs, log events, log stream, log groups. So let's discuss that terminology a little bit. Back to key concepts. So when we get to logging with EC2 instances, this terminology will come up a lot. And you will see this terminology on the DevOps Pro certification exam. So we have the log event, which represents the activity being reported. And log events have a timestamp and raw message in UTF-8 format. Then we have a log stream, which represents a sequence of log events from the same source, such as an application. Then we have a log group, which is a grouping of log events that have the same properties, policies, and access controls. Then we have metric filters, and the filters allow us to define which metrics to extract based on a filter criteria and publish to CloudWatch. So this allows us to pinpoint what we want to publish in our logs. Retention policies dictate how long the data is kept. And finally, the log agent. This is the agent that we can install on EC2 instances to automatically publish log events to CloudWatch. Now, as you can imagine, we can use bootstrapping to install this log agent. So let's go back. Let's check a little bit of this out. We'll get into this in much more depth in the upcoming lessons. First, let's go over to EC2, and I have one instance running. I'm going to click on Actions, and here we go, CloudWatch Monitoring. I already have detailed monitoring enabled, but if you wanted to enable or disable it, this is how you would get to it. And I'm going to grab this instance ID. Remember, the instance ID is one of our EC2 metric dimensions. Now, let's go over to CloudWatch, and let's click on Logs. Let's click on Metrics. We want to look at the EC2 namespace. Let's go into EC2, per instance metrics, and I want to look at CPU utilization. There it is, or we could have searched for it. And let's choose graph this metric only. And notice we're seeing some of the terminology, the statistics, the period of 5 minutes. And this can be changed to as low as 1 second. I'll change it to 5 seconds. Okay, so we have per instance metrics. And remember, I copied the instance ID, and I have 16 metrics available for this instance. And let's check out CPU utilization. Add to graph. All right. Now note that CPU utilization is less than 1% right now. But the point is, we are getting that metric graph for us. Let's check out status check failed. Add to graph. Nothing really going on, but just an example of how we can add metrics to our graph. Check out network packets out. And there's a bit more action for network packets. So that's a quick walkthrough on how we can send metrics from our EC2 instance to CloudWatch and work with that data once it's in CloudWatch. And in this lesson, we also reviewed much of the terminology that we will be encountering in the rest of the lessons in this section. So with that, let's mark this lesson complete and move on to the next.